Secrets from a Coach. Thrive and maximise your potential in the evolving workplace. Your weekly podcast with Debbie Green of Wishfish and Laura Thompson-Staveley of Phenomenal Training.
We're not doing that. It's all right. I'm just looking at the next book. Here we go. All right, Charlie.
Charlie.
Lovely sunny Rio. Is it sunny?
Yeah.
At the minute?
I don't know.
Don't know. You have to give us a weather update, Charlie. Because you know what we like. We love the weather.
Yeah. Ooh, something to whinge about.
Yeah. Okay. So we're doing number
229.
229. No,
Is that
not.
right?
228 we're doing.
Is it? 228.
228. Yeah.
Oh,
The
well
third
done, you.
one, Law.
The third one.
Yes.
Right, 228.
Livewired. And this is Laura's book.
Oh, love this book.
So we can have them crackling
Yeah.
live wires.
Oh, yes. Great idea. Yeah. Are you allowed to put in, it's alive? You know, like from Frankenstein. I don't know if that's hugely copyrighted or not. But yeah, that crackling music, that would be brilliant.
That crackling, yeah, that'd be quite cool, wouldn't it?
Electricity.
Electricity, yes. Sparking, yeah.
Yes. Nice one, Debs.
Cool.
Yes,
all right, then.
yes.
Let's go. Breathe.
Debs.
Law, you all right?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, actually. Good week. Looking forward to spending some time in the actual room with you this week.
I know.
Law, how cool is that?
I know. Now, we can't be too naughty because we need to stick within an agenda, Debs.
Yeah, what's that?
We can have sidebar conversations,
Yes.
but at the two people up at the front, someone has to keep the
Keep us on
programme
track.
progressing forward.
Yeah, because they want some outputs, which we will still give them, but
Absolutely.
yeah, not at 9 o'clock at night when they all want to be going home.
Absolutely not, no. I always say to people, I might be a little bit wavering on the morning and afternoon breaks, but I land that plane on time when it comes to course end.
Yeah, that's the bit everyone looks out for, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what's so interesting, Debs? Because we've been, all of our team have been in real delivery mode recently. The power of creating time and space for people to have great conversations with each other from different parts of an organisation.
Yeah.
And learning these days isn't just staring at a screen and, looking at static knowledge. Actually, that opportunity to learn in the room through conversation with just listening to people who bring a different perspective on how to manage people well, for example, has been quite incredible.
Yeah, it really has. I think we've noticed that sharing has sparked different ideas and thoughts in people that they may not have thought about before. But as you say, the energy that gets created, it's tangible, isn't it? And people have really appreciated the opportunity to do that. And yeah, the sparks are flying everywhere, isn't it? Which I suppose is a bit of a loose link, Law, to your book that we're doing for this week as part of our 4-part series on some of the books that we're reading at the moment. So we picked David Eagleman's Livewired. So tell me, Law, you alluded to this on our last episode, that this was a book that just went pop for you. So what is it? And tell us more.
All right, let me tell you how the story began.
Go on.
So I was reading the New Scientist magazine in an attempt to have non-blue screen forms of entertainment in my life. So, I get the hard copy of the New Scientist magazine each week. And they reference this book. And I've just learned over the years, whenever the New Scientist picks out a book, and the way they described it just sounded really interesting. So I got this book. And do you remember, Debs? I literally phoned you up going, oh my God, I've just heard a completely brand new hypothesis as to why humans dream.
Yes, you did.
And it blew my mind because for years, people have been sort of, talking about why do humans dream? Is it a way of processing info of the day? Is it a way of being able to sift out the stuff that's important, that's useful for your safety messages, for life and learning and all that kind of stuff? So I kind of sort of understood that and the importance of REM sleep and all that kind of stuff. But I'd never heard this hypothesis, which completely shifted my interpretation of how the brain works. And that was my entry point into this book.
So are you going to share us what that is, Law? Because you're alluding to it. And I bet people are going, well, what is it, Law? What is it? What is it? So tell us.
Well, if you're thinking that sounds interesting, but I haven't got time to read a book, we've done the hard work for you. So this is kind of a bit of an overview. So what David Eagleman's book is all about is, the book is called Livewired. And that's his way of describing how the brain isn't hardwired with its thinking processes and memory. As in, you know, I've learned something and my brain stays like that forever. In fact, our brain every single day is rewiring itself based on the information that it's sensing and is processing. So our brains can't help but be live wired. It's a living organ that every day is developing and shifting and shifting its shape.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about this idea of the brain has only a certain amount of real estate in its grey area. So there's although there's a huge expanse of neurons, all that kind of stuff, the brain will shape around its priorities. So if, for example, you close your eyes for a minute,
Mm-hmm.
what you will probably then find is, if you're lucky enough to have the gift of sight and the gift of hearing, then as your brain acclimatizes to the dark, it will shift around in its real estate, i.e. the other senses get prioritized.
Yeah.
So you might find it easier to hear things, or you might find it easier to sense things. So think how many times you might close your eyes because you want to do some deep concentration, because by shutting down one sense, it then prioritizes the other ones. Hence the reason why he says we dream. If the brain was experiencing 7 to 9 hours of darkness once every 24 hours, the brain might start to think that you'd gone blind and would start to rearrange the real estate in your brain.
Okay.
And then you would wake up then potentially with that bit of the brain shut down. So what his rationale for why we dream is it keeps the visual cortex stimulating your brain, so the brain doesn't think that it's lost that sense. And so the reason why we dream is it keeps the brain just topped up with enough visual stimulus each night, so then your brain doesn't rearrange the real estate and decommission one sense and then prioritize the other.
Oh, that is mind-blowing.
I know.
Literally.
And I remember reading this, right, just going, what is this witchcraft? I hadn't even ever thought.
No, but you wouldn't.
Is the pure reason why we dream is then just to keep the brain functioning going. Otherwise, it would think you'd lost that. You'd lost sight.
One of those sides, yeah.
And it would then start to move things around. And the reason why David Eagleman was very interested in all this stuff is, you know, examples of when he was growing up of a piano tuner who might be a blind person. Or someone who has had an accident or an injury or has been born with a sense not working, and then just the phenomenal ability of the brain to be able to work around those setbacks and to have new ways of thinking and new neural pathways. That means if you lose the use of one hand, your other hand then will be able to compensate for that.
That is so. When you think about that ability to adapt then to your circumstances and what's going on, and those people, as you said, recover from horrific injuries and learn to do something different better. What else does he say as that enables that to happen? As you said, it's the real estate in your brain and it won't shut it down like from dreaming. But what is it about that enables that to just take place in our brains?
Well, I guess it's all the electrical impulses. It's the fact that there's all this swirling around. The cells together, the cells that fire together wire together.
Right.
So that classic amazing thing that black taxi drivers who've had to go through the knowledge, their hypothalamus region, which is where that holds all that spatial awareness, all that knowledge where you're visualizing which road goes into which. An average London taxi driver's brain, that area was 20% heavier than someone who hasn't gone through the knowledge. So that physicality of the live wiring, all those electrical impulses that fire off all of those, all of those impulses through all your synapses and all that kind of stuff. And that's how knowledge is then created and then formed. And of course, there's so much interest in this area now, Debs, with the more that we're learning about brain diseases, the more we're learning about how to overcome setbacks through disabilities and just how to be able to work with our brain in a more mindful way rather than just being written off as someone that, they can't do that because they've got this wrong with them. And actually what he says, I think, which is so empowering, is the brain will find a way. It will find a way to adapt. But what can we do then to give it a helping hand? And that's where he's just got some great takeaways, which we can run through in a bit.
Yeah.
It's really, I think it's a really inspiring way to look at what is intelligence. Well, you're not necessarily born with intelligence. It's how you then process it, And
Yes.
what you process is what you feed your brain.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling a bit stuck at the moment, then just mixing things up a little bit
Yeah.
can be, really empowering. I know when I first set out being self-employed, I just knew I had to keep myself busy.
Yes. Okay.
I
Otherwise,
just
what would have
knew.
happened, Law? Do you reckon?
I would have sat there watching TV for 13 days, waiting for the 14th day where I had a bit of work. And I remember thinking, well, if you're out there talking all about, motivation and
Yeah.
inspiring and being your best self, if I've sat around in my pajamas for 13 days watching TV,
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to be the best state for me to
Maybe
be in.
not. Yeah.
So, whether you're job hunting, and there's a few key people in my life at the moment who are job hunting,
Yeah.
and whether you're setting out self-employed, whether you've got a bit of a lull at the moment, whether you're feeling a little bit stuck, just giving your brain some productive things, not to not relax. I guess
Yes.
that's the fine line to then not to be, to run yourself into the ground, but just to keep those senses stimulated, which is why
Okay.
exercise is
Yes.
such a one that exercise is the only thing that creates new brain cells.
Wow. Okay. And is that because you're having to think differently about how you approach something, so you're being more creative in the way you're thinking about how do I do this and do it well, or is there other things that are going on?
Well, first off, I think if you're prone to anxiety, your brain's
Yeah.
going to be thinking anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
might as well give it something productive to throw a bone to and sort of to keep the brain occupied.
Yeah.
There's then, I guess, that sort of that serendipity of, you sort of stumble into something or a conversation that's a bit different. And,
Mm.
the internet is great at sort of serving you up new things that you might not have known before. But equally, it can keep you trapped in a spiral of only communicating with people that believe the same as you. So
Yeah.
as we've seen on sessions, all of us recently, working with people from different parts of organisation just freshens your perspective a bit.
Yeah.
So your brain is giving sort of new things to think about. And with reference to exercise, my understanding is, from something I read ages ago, is what that does is because of that huge amount of oxygen that's then pumping through,
Yeah.
is it
Yeah.
sends a message to the brain to create new cells. So
Okay.
that's the very sort of, because what it's saying to your brain is you're going to have to gear up for some new challenges. So it just
Yeah.
sort of kickstarts that whole program.
And gets
Your
it
brain doesn't
ready.
know that it's a positive one of exercise.
Yeah, okay, but it does, because we always talk about, isn't it, whether you tell your brain you can't, you can or you can't, you don't or you do or won't and will. It just hears something, doesn't it? They always say it gets the action word out of it, and then it go, I can give you that. So it's what you feed it, I suppose,
Yeah.
as well, isn't it? And what I found when I sort of had a quick look through it was his take on the fact that early childhood development is critical in being able to set the foundations for our abilities in order for our brains to be more adaptable. And that just got me smiling as to, do we consciously think about that every day? How do we do that for the young people, our children, so that that foundation, that childhood development is happening right as soon as possible with stimulus and different things and experiences? And I suppose that on one hand will help some who are investing in their children, but what, about those that aren't, then where do they get that from? That was something I felt was wow, because experiences physically, as you say, shape the brain depending on what you're doing and how often you're doing it, but the fact that it is critical to development as a child is huge, right? And
Yeah.
what else did you find out when you were reading about that, Law?
Well, you've just made me smiley, because I remember, what would have been 10 years ago. No, when do you start weaning a baby? It's from 6 months, isn't it? 6
Is
months.
it 6 months? I don't know. It's a long
6
time
months.
ago, Law, since I did that.
Well, you see, there you go. Even that, right? Because your brain hasn't had to think about it.
Yeah.
It's pruned away that
Yeah, I
knowledge.
don't need it.
Yeah, you don't need it. So what your brain does is those underused neurons that haven't been activated and have the electrical impulses sent through, your brain will prune that away as you sleep each night, and then it just gets removed in sort of your waste fluid, basically. So it's fascinating how it all kind of works.
Yeah, it is.
But you've just made me smile, because I remember, when you're sort of learning all about self-led weaning, and I was sort of like, what? So your baby can just eat anything? Like a 6 months, I was going to trot off to McDonald's and get themselves a takeaway. And I remember the woman saying, "Well, no, only what you provide on the on the tray." And I think we could transfer that to the brain of a 48, 58, 68, 78-year-old.
Yeah.
What you lay out for your brain to consume is determined the foundation you're going to give it. So if all I'm looking
Okay.
at is negative, same stuff, or staying with the same fixed perspective,
Mm.
like with nutrition in the early years of raising a baby, you want to give them a full palate that is going to reduce
Yeah.
allergy, that is going to be increased confidence in trying, new things. And I guess that's the same thing with your brain. It's all consuming info. And am I going to enable myself self-led learning, self-led
Yes.
weaning?
I love that.
And I'm going to sort of pick off what I want, but you better hope that the array you're giving your brain
Yeah.
is in the direction that you want it to grow, because wherever your brain is focusing on, that is what will be live wired in. And I think that's really empowering.
Fascinating.
It's going to become more relevant for me now as the children get a bit older, but who you hang around with at school, I can see is starting to have a bigger influence than the direct messaging you can give at home, because suddenly those kids are, getting more external influencing outside the house and inside the house. And from a Livewired point of view, I guess, you can't prevent someone from learning, but you can at least balance it out, so sort of chatting about stuff at the beginning and end and what.
That is fascinating, isn't it? I just love that. Look, you just made me think then, because sometimes, we do workshops with a variety of different people in different stages and, of their lives and things. And it always makes me, I suppose, take it on a bit of a challenge, really, when someone says, oh, I've been doing this job for years. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I always used to say, no, watch me. Yeah. And it was because that must be that same approach, right?
Absolutely.
Because you're not maybe using it, or I've just done this forever, and what are you going to tell? You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I always think about that statement and go, yeah, you can, you really can.
Absolutely. And in fact, funny enough, Debs, on my sort of little scribbled notes, you can teach an old dog new tricks if you can be bothered. And what David Eagleman would say is, the older the dog is, the more important it is to learn new tricks, because you might become incredibly proficient and efficient at the role that you do. But if there's a bit of change, then it can throw out some of that confidence. And actually, I mean, we've talked about this loads, because I just think it's so important to not only think about the job that we do now to earn money and to be able to do what we need to do, but just from a brain health point of view, the more you have to think creatively in your job, which tends to be in the middle part of your lifetime, the research has shown that that's more likely to have a healthier, juicier brain later on, because your brain is used to learning and thinking and adapting stuff, which is, if you've just closed down your brain to nobody can teach me nothing, I've been doing this job for decades, I don't need to know what's going on over there, I'm just going to stick doing what I'm doing. Well, number one, you better hope the robots aren't coming from that, because if you don't need to learn, it probably can be automated. But anyway, that's a side note. But even just from a personal perspective, your brain is more likely to hold on to those memories and process new stuff as you get older, because it's use it or lose it. That's what David Eagleman talks a lot
I saw
about.
that. And I think that's a really fascinating, isn't it? Because when you look at the work that Carol Dwecker's done as well, right, about fixed and growth mindset, I suppose, I know they're all linked somewhere because it's all to do with your mind and what you're thinking, what you feed it and everything else. But it's interesting how messaging maybe growing up that you hear over time that says, oh, you're no good at that, so why should I bother? But that isn't going to help us either to continue to, even like, stretch and come out of our comfort zones and learn something new. And I think it's, how do we encourage teams, people, leaders, managers to recognize that there is always something to learn, but it's maybe how they approach it. What would what's your thoughts based on your experience, Laura, of that?
I think that's a lovely link. And where I would just sort of simplify kind of those same things are all arriving at the same place, but where Carol Dweck's fixed versus growth mindset might then involve overcoming and challenging some beliefs that you might have. The David Eagleman Livewired approach would be, I guess, to add on that and sort of force feed your brain messages that then remind yourself of what you have done. So very simply, if you've got a team that are feeling a bit sort of stuck or a bit negative or a bit kind of hard done by, then starting each team conversation or one-to-one with, what have you learned this week? What have you tried out? What has been something that has surprised you this week? And what you're doing is you're forcing your brain to self-led weaning, not just picking off the same bits of bread that you always do, but you're sort of saying, oh, what about the broccoli over there? And how about this olive? So you're where from Carol Dweck's is more of a mindset. how you think about yourself and
Yeah.
therefore how you identify, am I someone that can do or can't do this?
Yeah.
For David Eagleman, much more on a neural level, is balance out your and get a variety of data,
Mm.
because your brain is guzzling and processing that data, wanted
Yeah.
or not. Because if you can worry
Yeah.
about something that you don't really want to, that means you can think about something that actually might be useful. And so I think that's where those two things cross over really nicely, around practically the questions you ask of people will then divert that brain's attention to where that goes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I suppose in our world where we're giving people some different, maybe different information, or asking them to think a bit from a different perspective, or thinking about how we can, I suppose, optimize that lifelong learning really, and that mental flexibility. That's the one that's going to enable people, if they want to, as you said, have a brain that keeps on moving and shaping and shifting and not losing it if they don't use it. And it's really interesting. So how would we ensure that we were learning something new every day?
Ooh. Well, if we liken this to an exercise, sort of new exercise approach, I guess sort of first of all, you've got to decide, I want to commit to this. I think it's going to be good for me. Second thing, you've got to work out, well, when's going to be best, so it doesn't sort of feel like this is another thing to do.
Mm.
And the third thing then is to try and gamify it, sort of make it fun. So it could be you make a commitment to yourself to catch up with someone that you're not caught up with for a while, and just to have that chat. If you're currently in work and you're wanting to bring a bit more creativity from a Livewired point of view, then actively looking for something once a week to sort of, turn your brain to it. But interestingly, learning a new skill, or getting back with one that maybe you've left dormant a bit, all of those things. It doesn't have to be work related,
Yeah.
or even knowledge related. In fact, one of the things he says, and I just called it on my little notes here, it's like a little circuit
Yeah. Okay.
thing. So mixing things up, so rotating between different types of challenges. So combine intellectual stuff, reading
Yeah.
and puzzles, with creative stuff and painting and music, physical, dance and martial arts, and different activities to keep your brain sharp. So it can be fun stuff.
Ah,
And
okay.
when you have to think differently, that's what learning is. I mean, learning is a semi-permanent behaviour change as a result of new knowledge. So if you are then actually being able to just think a little bit differently, but
Yeah.
it could be the bright spark of your day. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be do some learning.
Yeah.
In fact, it could be mucking about and doing something that feels
Yeah.
naughty and a bit rebellious.
Yeah. But
And
you're
if I
still learning, right?
absolutely, if I channel our amazing colleague Lindsay Thompson's stuff that she does with all the dynamics, the team dynamics stuff, if you can unlock your free child
Yes.
when it's safe and appropriate to do so, the easier it is to stay mature and adult, when
Yeah.
you're sort of working in your job. So I think this is not about taking yourself back to school. This is about what could be something that you could do just for fun, just to freshen things up a little bit.
Mm.
So it's a light spot in your working day or wherever you're at. Dave, I've got to say, one of the things that I think is quite, just to link in a little bit with the Mo Gawdat book that we did in the
Yeah.
first one of this
Yes.
Scary Smart Start. So David Eagleman has been, involved in a lot of the stuff around neurotech. So little tech implants that go inside your brain.
Yes, I saw that when I was looking at that. What is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
all about?
Well, they've had that for about 10, 15 years.
Have
So if
they? Right.
someone has had a stroke or has had some kind of, brain setback, there are things that already can go in that then just help misfiring things go a little bit. Anyway, so it was all beyond me a little bit in terms of the actual detail of it. But I watched every single minute of Elon Musk's neurotech launch that he did about 2 years ago.
Right.
And, in true Elon Musk style, he did it in a throwaway comment. He said, "We're not planning to let the marketeers in to the neurotech."
Not planning.
No.
Okay.
So I just think sort of,
Wow.
with open eyes and, from a cautiously optimistic approach, but the brain has sort of been left alone really for
Yeah.
about, when Freud first started thinking about the brain about 100 years ago. We haven't
Yes.
really had the brain being mucked around with much. It's just sort of been there silently doing its thing. But I think in this dawn of AI and this dawn of all of these new bionic stuff, we're going to learn more and more fascinating stuff about the brain. And so
Wow.
I think there's going to be some really interesting times ahead with reference to this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
'Cause that chucks up a whole different
Oh, my
set
God.
of dilemmas, doesn't it, really?
Yeah.
From all sorts of levels of human existence, doesn't it?
Yeah. So sort of back to good old manual version of us. before we start like getting literally plugged into the matrix,
Yes.
probably some the bits that sort of I really enjoyed from it was how learning new skills is really good for us. And the older the dog you are, go for it. There's still life
Yeah.
in those hips, you know, even
Yeah.
if you might need to put a bit of a, you know
Hip
the
replacement.
Alsatians that they have the wheels on, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Have some support.
Absolutely. And in fact,
Yeah.
whenever you see a dog like that, you think, oh, God, you know, tips are resilience. So actually, you never
Yeah.
know who you might be inspiring by actively thinking about learning new skills,
Yeah.
mixing things up a little bit. So mixing
Yeah.
up your visual, your sounds and your touch and all that is
Nice.
good for your brain. Every day is school day. You know, that's one of our favourite
That's, yeah.
phrases. So optimise lifelong learning. And if you work for an organisation that's lucky enough to have L&D stuff, just go for it. Put your
Yes,
hand
do
up,
it.
you know,
Yeah.
just get involved. And if you don't, well, things like this are good for your continuing professional development, just to keep your brain sharp. And
Yeah.
using tech to expand your cognitive and sensory abilities, as long as you trust it.
Yeah.
Yeah, leveraging the brain's use it or lose it rule.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's probably the sort of the main takeaway. I think that's really empowering from this. The brain is live wired. Every
Yeah.
day it's learning, it's changing. And even two identical twins have got a different brain map because everyone processes things differently.
Yeah, which makes sense. And I love that, as they use it or lose it. And I suppose, just going back to your point, we always sort of encourage people to do just the recognition piece of what they have learned when we say, let's do a gale, you know, one thing they're grateful for. So you have to consciously think about what it is you've done through the day that has filled you with joy or love or luck or whatever it might be. So when we say, to do a gale, which is gratitude is the first one, and the accomplishment, what have I achieved or accomplished today, how have I improved, and what am I learning? I suppose that in itself will enable us to have that mental flexibility, because we can write that, we can draw it, we can speak it, we can do whatever we want with it, right? So we're using all of the senses, because we feel it, and it's just an interesting one. That's just made me think, oh, that is a good idea to do a gale
Absolutely.
every day.
Because what you're doing is you are sending a message to the brain, say that memory is important.
Yes.
Don't prune it away into night's sleep, because sleep sweeps away 80% of all of the data you've collected that day, which is why the older you get, the trickier it is to rummage around in that wardrobe to find, oh yeah, what was that thing again?
What was that name?
You've got so many things, whereas when you're sort of starting out, you've only had one project you've worked on. When you've worked on 1,000, that's a lot of random info that you've got to sort of sift through. So that purposeful reflection at the end of the day, what that is saying is a message to your brain is, don't prune that away. It's really important. And it might not have felt important at the time, but if as you're reflecting, as you're brushing your teeth at the end of the day, oh yeah, I met that person in that team. And they mentioned a Macmillan cancer event that's going on. Oh yeah, actually, I do want to get involved in that. But you might have forgotten that if you hadn't given yourself 2 minutes just to reflect on the day, to then remind your brain, actually, I'm going to fire that little memory again. And that then says double the likelihood of it being remembered.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. I love it. So I suppose my call to action off the back of that would be to do a gale, and not every day. You don't have to do it every day, but as you said, to just to put that, reinforce it and put it in the memory bank, if you like. And I think that's why I always love watching the film Inside Out, because it just is so brilliant at the way it just shows you how your brain is wired, right? And I just think that's such a clever way of depicting it. And that's just popped into my head, because I think that would be my call to action. Do a gale.
Yeah, and watch a film. I mean,
Watch a film.
Watch a cartoon. How good's that, Summer?
It just popped into my head, because random things pop into my head, don't they, Laura? But I just think that was so clever, because in a way that is the subliminal messaging is around keeping active, looking at different ways of doing it, always being proactive, lifelong learning, experience. Do you remember when? It just sort of sums it all up, really. So watch a film, everyone. I love that, but
brilliant.
Read the book.
Inside Out.
What would you say, Laura, about your share the secret?
So my share the secret would be, maybe there's an opportunity to set up a bit of a social where you work. Maybe learning just for the fun of it. So learning isn't just for young children or for when you've retired and you've got time to do these things. Actually learning as part of that feeling good and keeping good as an adult in your working life as well, whatever status you happen to be at the time. So I'd say grab a friend, grab a colleague, and think, right, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, the nights are about to get lighter. What could we do just because? Just to get a bit of energy, and I bet at some point there'd be a tangible impact you'd see in your professional day-to-day. But don't do it for work. Do it just for the joy of learning.
Yeah, just because.
Just because.
Yeah, because I suppose the more you do that, the more you're unlocking any potential or hidden potential you didn't even realise you had. So I love that.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Absolutely. Never too old to learn, never too young to lead. There are no time frames on these things. It's your life, and I guess it's just adding in amongst all of the doing, just where might learning be in on that as well, because it's good for our brains. It's like taking your body to the gym or into the pool or some kind of exercise. It's the equivalent for your brain as well.
Yeah, I loved it. I've loved this one.
Me
I know
too.
we were chatting about it. It's just one of them. And our last one we're looking at is around compassion, aren't we? That's my book that is about compassion and how we can bring that more into the world of work and in our leadership management styles. So looking forward to having a chat through that one, Laura.
Oh, can't wait. Oh, it's so good doing these book reviews.
Oh, really cool.
There's just such amazing stuff out there. And, blink and you miss it. And, this is the second one that we've run of a sort of a book review. And actually, these are some of the most listened to because, well, they're fantastic books. So big thank you to David Eagleman for this one. It's an absolute inspirational read. And just back to the kind of the first taste I had of it with Why We Dream, it just blew my mind about how clever our brains are at being able to adapt and adjust no matter what your setback, no matter what your upbringing. People, I think I get very emotional about this, Debs, because I've met so many people who've written themselves off because they think they're not clever or they didn't do very well at school. And actually that was then. This is now. Your brain is live wired. So it is built to learn no matter what certificates you do or don't have.
Yeah, and it adjusts as well, doesn't it? Depending on what's happened, it will always adjust to different ways to make it more acceptable or achievable or accessible to whatever it is you need it to do. So, I think it's amazing. I love our brain.
Oh, I know. Yeah, well, most of the time.
Look after it. Yeah. Most of the time.
It'd be nice to be a bit
calmer.
Feed
it nice things.
Which is why I'm looking forward to your book next week, Compassion.
Compassion. We're going to explore that more. But in the meantime, keep wiring, Laura, and
Absolutely.
Don't use it, don't lose it. But we're in the room together, so we definitely won't lose it.
Definitely. Don't worry. I'll be bringing out the old script again, Debs. You go, oh, here she goes again, that one. No, new stuff.
No, new stuff.
Yeah,
well, I don't remember what you said the last time anyway, Laura, so it's all new to me.
You're just smiling and waving. Oh, so
wave. Oh, that's different. I don't remember her saying that, but you did, and I just don't recall that. So that's part of my adapting my brain to that. So
it's hugely
so cool. Yeah. Well, I look forward to it. See you later.
Love you.
Love you.
We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at contact@secretsfromacoach.com or follow us on Insta or Facebook. If you're a Spotify listener, give us a rating as it's easier for people to find us. And if you want to know more, visit our website, www.secretsfromacoach.com, and sign up for our newsletter. Here to cheer you on and help you thrive in the ever-changing world of work.